From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Friday, August the 14th, 2020. Well, after the historic Abraham Accord was announced yesterday, the normalization of ties between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, reports today that a delegation from Israel will soon be meeting with senior leadership in the UAE. Israel's Channel 12 reports today that an Israeli delegation will travel to the Emirates next week. Ynet said the team would be led by the head of the Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, Yossi Cohen, whom Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked last night for his contributions to the historic deal, tweeting that he called Cohen and thanked him for the assistance of the Mossad in developing the ties with the Gulf states over the years, which assisted in bringing the peace treaty to fruition. Netanyahu also tweeted his gratitude to several countries in the region, writing, "I thank Egyptian President al-Sisi and the governments of Oman and Bahrain for their support of the historic peace treaty between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, which is expanding the circle of peace and will be good for the entire region." Messages of support were also heard from the United Nations, the European Union, and individual countries, including from the leaders of Germany, the UK, France, China, and India. Tel Aviv's City Hall lit up with the colors of the Israeli and UAE flags last night, with a tweet in Arabic saying, "We send love from Tel Aviv." Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden welcomed the Abraham Accord, calling it a historic step to bridge the deep divides of the Middle East. Biden said the UAE's offer to publicly recognize the State of Israel is a welcome, brave, and badly needed act of statesmanship. And he wrote, "It is a critical recognition that Israel is a vibrant, integral part of the Middle East that is here to stay. Israel can and will be a valued strategic and economic partner to all who welcome it." Biden added that annexation would be a body blow to the cause of peace, which is why he said, "I oppose it now and would oppose it as president." Of course, there are those in Israel angered by that aspect of the UAE deal, of Israel agreeing to suspend extending sovereignty to parts of the West Bank. Jewish settlement leaders harshly criticized Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu on that issue, who in turn, as we reported to you, said the issue was still on the table and reassured that the matter had only been temporarily halted at the request of President Trump. The Palestinians, meanwhile, expressed outrage at the UAE deal. Palestinian Authority spokesperson Nabil Abu Radene said on Palestine TV that the Palestinian leadership rejects the actions of the Emirati government, considering it to be a betrayal of the Palestinian people and Jerusalem and Al-Aqsa, referring there to the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, where a number of Palestinians taking part in Friday prayers today at the holy site trampled on and tried to set fire to a poster of UAE leader Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, until Israel police stepped in to disperse the crowd. Turning now to some other news, Lithuania this week became the latest country to ban Iranian-backed, Lebanese-based Hezbollah in its entirety and recognize it as a terrorist group without distinction between its military and political branches, something the EU has failed to do, which in turn allows Hezbollah to continue to operate in many European countries. The American Jewish Committee urged the EU to follow in the footsteps of those countries who have preceded Lithuania in recognizing the true nature of Hezbollah, including the United States, Canada, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, and others. B'nai B'rith International wrote, "We join calls for the rest of the EU to fully recognize Hezbollah without distinction as the deadly terrorist group it is." Former executive director of Americans for a Safe Israel, Helen Friedman, has died. You may know Friedman as a guest on JBS. Former Consul General of Israel in New York, Dani Dayan, tweeted that Friedman was a staunch supporter of Medinat Israel, the State of Israel, and Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. A proud Zionist and a lovely human being. She will be missed. Dayan, by the way, also extended his best wishes to Yisrael Nitzan, who is now acting Consul General of Israel in New York. Dayan's tenure at the Israeli consulate in New York ended on July the 31st. Dayan also wished Gilad Erdan well. Erdan replaces Dani Danon as Israel's new representative to the United Nations. Erdan was Israel's Minister of Internal Security, Strategic Affairs, and Information. He will also take over as Israel's next ambassador to the United States, replacing Ron Dermer this coming January. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Friday, August the 14th. Live Shabbat services are coming up at 6 o'clock from New York City's Central Synagogue, followed by Kabbalat Shabbat services from the Hampton Synagogue. At 8 o'clock, renowned professor of Holocaust Studies Deborah Lipstadt discusses her book Anti-Semitism Here and Now with writer Barry Weiss. At 9, it's the film Deadly Honor, which examines the phenomenon of honor killings. At 10, it's a concert from Pharaoh's Daughter, then a replay of the Hampton Synagogue services, followed by a replay from Central Synagogue. And coming up next, a look at this week's Torah portion. And that's the JBS News Update for Friday, August the 14th, 2020. I'm Teisha Bader. Stay healthy, stay well, and Shabbat Shalom.